I made a prediction back in the late fall, early spring, just about the time the Mueller report was breaking, that this was going to be the summer of Trump's revenge. And I have been proven correct. Good morning, it's Pastor Marty from the Afternoon Drive. Welcome to the Friday edition here on YouTube. Well, we all saw the circus show. The carnival came to town. The Mueller hearings on Capitol Hill. Now, some people are saying it was a draw, that there were things the Republicans could walk away and feel good about. There were things the Democrats could walk away, feel good about, because after all, he didn't exonerate Trump. Prosecutors do not exonerate. They prosecute. There was no evidence. He didn't have a case to bring a prosecution against the president. Thus, by default, it's an exoneration in that he couldn't make a case against him. You know why? Because there was no there. We feel good about it on the Trump side, obviously, for a couple of reasons. One, we put a lot of faith and trust in this president, and we have been rewarded for that faith and trust. We do understand how dirty and nasty the Democrats can operate and what they will do to absolutely eviscerate anyone they consider to be the opposition who won't fall in line, get in line, and do as you're told. And of course, Donald Trump isn't that kind of a guy. And we also understood in looking at this as it began to unravel, and the real media, not that fake stuff that calls itself the mainstream lying legacy corporate corrupt propaganda media, but the real alternative media, as it really began to delve into, and real reporters that still do investigative reporting began to dig into the origins of all this, we began to realize this was a coup, not collusion. Any collusion had actually taken place with Hillary Rodham Clinton. First was that stupid reset button when she was Secretary of State. Then the millions of dollars that were funneling through the Clinton Foundation when she was still Secretary of State. And Russia was making a down payment to do a little, play for pay. It only stood to reason, and I have been saying this for over 2 years, it only stood to reason that Russia had more to gain with Hillary Rodham Clinton in the White House than they did with Donald Trump in the White House. Yet, the Russian interference, the so-called Russian meddling in our election, which some on Capitol Hill and some in the mainstream media, including CNN and PMSNBC, are trying to say that that is the one thing where no matter how befuddled and bewildered Robert Barr seemed to be, he was very clear on the Russian meddling. Okay, let's get really clear on this. Russians have always meddled in our election. It didn't start in 2016. In fact, Russia is not the only foreign entity that tries to meddle in American elections. Hey, can you really handle a shot of truth today? We mess in other countries' elections. And sometimes, when they don't put the leadership in that we like, we topple it. We call it regime change, brought to you by the CIA. So the fact that the Russians meddle in our election is not new. It's not news. They did not change any votes. They do not have access to our voting machines. There is something to be said occasionally for doing things old school. And when they keep talking about wanting to upgrade the way we vote and we need to do it electronically and through computers, those can be hacked into. Just ask the Pentagon. They've been hacked. Ask the DNC. They've been hacked. Computers can be hacked into. Those old voting machines that you walk in, pull the curtain closed, and you got to kind of depress the button. The only way that gets messed up is if it's Florida and they can't differentiate between a pimpled Chad or a hanging Chad or whatever other nonsense that was during the Al Gore recount. But there's no way on a mass level for the Russians to actually hack into our voting process because there's nothing for them to hack. All right, that said, one thing, though, that Russia does want to do, not just in 2016, but in every election cycle, is create chaos, create problems. Were there Russian troll farms that bought up advertising on Facebook for Donald Trump? Sure there were. Do you know that the $100,000 or so they spent on Facebook, half of that money they spent post-election? Post-election. And of that $50,000 that they spent post-election, they spent half of it on behalf of, in favor of, Hillary Rodham Clinton. And you know what they were doing with that half they were spending for Hillary? Well, they were putting up advertising and memes and articles that Trump had stolen the election through, come on, say it, Russian collusion. By the way, pre-election, they spent about $50,000 and spent half on Hillary Rodham Clinton. So that means of the $100,000 or so they spent on Facebook, $50,000 was what they spent on Donald Trump. If you can spend $50,000 on Facebook and quote-unquote win, steal an election, what's the point of campaigning? What's the point in raising hundreds of millions of dollars? You don't need to. You just get some Russian bots to go ahead through their troll farming, put up some Facebook ads, and shazam, Batman, you got the Oval Office. Now, doesn't it stand to reason that Russia, which had paid millions of dollars to Hillary Rodham Clinton, to her hubby, ex-president Bill Clinton, to give $500,000 speeches in Moscow, they end up with 20% of our uranium, but they wanted a whole lot more than that. They knew that with Hillary Rodham Clinton, it was going to be business as usual, i.e., that globalist agenda, where the global oligarch powers have already gathered, and they've already decided who gets to do what, who gets to be a leader in what, who builds their economy on what. And see, you got to remember the Middle East and Russia were number 1 and 2 in oil production and in oil exportation or exporting. Now America's number 1 because of Donald Trump. That relegates Russia to number 3. You really think Russia wanted the guy who was going to come in and not do the status quo, not do what the left, right, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative paradigm has been in this country for over 60 years? Simply a different side of the same coin. That oligarch, deep state, elite, not a dime's worth of difference between your typical career Democrat or your typical career Republican. They knew what they were getting with Hillary Rodham Clinton. She would bluster and at times saber rattle and do this or say that, but at the end of the day, she was going to fall in line with that globalist agenda. They knew Trump wasn't. Now, they wanted to create chaos in our election cycle, but trust me, they were farther ahead by having Hillary Rodham Clinton in the Oval Office than Donald J. Trump. And shazam, Batman, the New York Times has kind of figured that out now. In fact, the New York Times is actually running articles if the Dossier, which was used to procure the FISA warrants, you know, that whole process that Bob Mueller seemed absolutely clueless on, that Fusion GPS had been paid by Hillary Rodham Clinton to do opposition research on Donald Trump, and they went to Russia and got information from Russian spy agencies. And Mueller's sitting there like, well, what do you think about this? This is beyond my purview. I've never heard of Fusion GPS. I guarantee most of you know more about Fusion GPS than pre-Alzheimer's Bobby Mueller does. But now you have the New York Times saying, hold it, time out. If Hillary Rodham Clinton paid Fusion GPS for opposition research on Donald Trump, and that opposition research was actually created by, in the Steele dossier, hostile entities like Russia, then Russia knew all about the dossier. And Russia, part of their meddling in our election was the creation of a phony dossier in the hopes of it being used to discredit and maybe even impeach a sitting president. Oh, so there's more Russian meddling which has been misrepresented, lied about by the fake, phony media. Last night, on the Hannity Show, Sean Hannity referenced that New York Times article.
They suggested at the New York Times that the dirty dossier that Hillary paid for that was used to spy on your campaign, your transition, and even your presidency, sir, was likely Russian disinformation from the beginning. Now, if that's the case, that would mean that the Russians knew that Hillary was paying for those lies, which would mean that the narrative that the American people have been fed by the media and the Democrats that, well, they were trying to help you, the Russians, that would mean if the New York Times is right for once, and I suspect they may very well be, that they were trying to hurt you more than Hillary.
Many of us have been saying for months, Mr. President, you have got to declassify these FISA warrants. It's time to investigate the investigators. And President Trump, in his interview with Sean Hannity last night, said something that has really been overlooked by the rest of media, including conservative media, including the other Fox News pundits, including CNN, PMSNBC. They all seem to miss this passing comment that Donald Trump made to Sean Hannity last night regarding declassification.
Well, we have a very respected gentleman, a very high-quality person named William Barr, and I can tell you he's working so hard. And rather than just doing a total release, I gave him a total release. In other words, he's got everything. Anything he needs, he's got. He's the Attorney General of the United States. He's got a lot of very good people under him that I guess are involved. And I gave them a total release. So all of it's been released, and he has all of it. I've also given him authorization to release it to whoever he wants, whether it's his people or, frankly, perhaps people like Devin Nunes, who is a star.
Bum, ba-dum, bum. I told you this is the summer of Trump's revenge. He has declassified everything. He hasn't made it public to us yet. But the Attorney General, William Barr, and anyone the Attorney General wants to share it with, they have now full access to everything. Let me say that again. Everything. You better believe that this Attorney General, along with the Inspector General, they are looking into all things Hillary, collusion, Russian meddling. They are looking into James Comey, Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Peter Strzok, and maybe, especially after his performance on Capitol Hill this week, Bobby Mueller himself. Like, who was actually running this charade of an investigation? I said this a couple of weeks ago regarding the president and the squad. He is a 4D chess player. He is always moves ahead of his opponent. The president is allowing this to play out, letting it take its time, building that case, allowing the powers that be around him now, that he has weeded out a lot of the deep state and individuals that he could never trust within his own administration. He's got some quality people in there now, and some things are going to happen because Mr. Barr, whether or not he was ever a Trump supporter, is a lover of the Constitution, a lover of America, and whether it's a Democrat or Republican, he understands the danger in this never ever being allowed to happen again to another duly elected sitting United States president. And it's not enough to expose it. There are people that need to face criminal prosecution, and not just low-level individuals. Some of the big names at the top, the faces that have been paraded across television, having tried to tout and laud their own integrity and moral authority and moral clarity, who have really been at the heart of a coup to bring down a president. And men like William Barr and the Inspector General and the teams that they have assembled, they really do put America first. And by that I mean they put the Constitution and the American people first. And they do not want a behind-the-scenes, shadowy government and oligarch being able to pull strings, manipulate, and destroy people who haven't done anything just because they don't like their political views. This president became public enemy number one to the deep state oligarch because he put America first. How dare he? This is a globalist agenda now. This is a globalist economy now. This is a new world, one world order. And George H.W. Bush was proud to put his name on it and, quote, usher it in. And Donald Trump is exposing it and stomping it out. And this will be the summer of his revenge. We're going to start seeing some new indictments. Not on process crimes of people that at one time were associated with President Trump and, misspoke in an answer they gave to the FBI, so they were charged with lying, or old men and their tax issues regarding their businesses with foreign governments 20 plus years ago. Now, there are going to be some real indictments now. Some real individuals are going to have to go to jail. Why? Well, let me borrow a little phrase from the left. The patriots in this country, including the patriots within the FBI and our intelligence agencies and our Department of Justice, the true patriots, the true lovers of this country and the Constitution and what it stands for, whether they be Democrat or Republican, the true patriots, they're woke. They're woke. And it's about time, and they're going to stay woke, because this cannot happen ever, ever again. That's it. That is my rant for today. Hey, give us a thumbs up and a like if you enjoyed this video. Share it to other places so people know about this channel. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel and smack the bell for my next rant.